Now I want to go to a regular contributor to this show who's been through a hell of a time thanks to our international border closure. She's now in hotel quarantine in Sydney. Kosha Gada, who's the Managing Director of Recastled Technology. Good to talk to you again, Kosha, in difficult circumstances though. First up, tell us, you've been back in India, sadly for a personal bereavement. Tell us when you went to India, why and how long you were there.
Hi, Chris. Good to be with you again. And apologies for the Wi-Fi and hotel quarantine. It could be better. So I went to India in mid-March. I left the country March 17th to be with my father in the last days of his life. He was battling complications from a late-onset neurodegenerative condition for which there's no cure. And my parents moved back to India in their retirement after they had immigrated to the United States in the 1960s and lived there for over a couple of decades. So, I had a really close relationship with my father. He led a remarkable life. He was a great man, a wonderful husband and father. It was very important to me to try and be with him in his final days, and I moved heaven and earth to make that happen, to get there. Luckily, I made it in time. I was with him for the last 6 days of his life and with my mother for some weeks after that. And as it turned out, with the situation in India unraveling the way it did in April, I had to move more than heaven and earth to get back. So I've just arrived in the country 2 days ago, and when all is said and done and I'm done with quarantine, it will have been 2.5 months before I can be reunited with my husband and my 2 young children, 6 and 8, who are waiting for me in Melbourne.
Yeah, Kosha, we're so sorry for your loss, but I thought it was important to share that with people because there's been so much criticism of those stranded in India saying, well, why did they go there? There's a pandemic, why did they go? I mean, of course you had to go to India. That's such a precious time, such a sad loss, but you needed to get there. But then suddenly your own country bans you from returning. Now, you were fortunate in a way because you hold American citizenship as well. So you were able to go to the US for 2 weeks, then come back into Australia. Is that right?
That's right. So that was my plan B. I was sort of watching what was going to happen. I was all set to depart from India and return to Australia. And then 48 hours before I was scheduled to leave, the flight ban got put into place. I was anticipating something like that might happen. So I was holding a plan B ticket back to America, which is home for me, so I could go there. And my plan was to spend a night or two there max and then come back to Australia. But mid-flight, when I was flying literally midway through my flight from Delhi to San Francisco, the Biosecurity Act was invoked, which criminalized that plan. So I had to wait out the full 15 days in America, which I did, before I could come back, and now I'm in quarantine for 2 weeks.
Well, I've railed against this measure since the government, before they put it in place, when it was being discussed. I think the great right of citizenship is to return to your country. Tell me what your thoughts are about the ban, and especially applying it just to one group of citizens, that is those Australians who happen to be in India.
Yes, look, the way I think about this is, ultimately I think a sovereign country has the right to protect its borders from any and all threats, whether that be a pathogen, whether it be illegal immigration, whether it be terrorism, whether it be cyber warfare or anything else. What is curious and very interesting about the Australian situation, as you allude to, is it seems to be the only or one of the very few countries where these border protections are applying to its own citizens. Whereas, for instance, in the United States, which also President Biden did pass a ban on flights from India, but exempted from that are citizens and permanent residents. So I know that I can always get home to the U.S., whereas Australia's ban is applying even to citizens, which I think is probably one of the issues where the controversy comes from. And then I think the other issue, too, is, and this has been a long-standing debate, is ultimately a lot of people have this view, legitimately so, I think, that if you stack up on one side the threat level of COVID and ultimately fatality rate, with, on the other side of the ledger, all these things, the erosion of civil liberties, constitutional rights, kids being out of school for over 2 years in many parts of the country and so on and so forth, that is it a right balance? Or has the cure become kind of worse than the disease? And I think that's, an ongoing debate. And increasingly, a lot of people are questioning that.
Well, my point is that we have a barrier against the pathogen. It doesn't require bans. It's hotel quarantine. And you're sitting in it right now, Kosha. And let me give you advice, having been through it myself. Keep busy. Do lots of work. Do lots of Skype interviews. Give yourself something to do in there.
That's great. I'm happy to come back anytime.
Great. Thanks, Kosha. Appreciate your time. Kosha Gada there, who's shared her trauma, her personal trauma, both back in India and then in trying to get home. That's the human side of what we've done as a country here.